I spent the night with the wealthy young master. 5 years later, the young master showed up and said, "I heard you had 2 kids with me?" I looked at the young master's dark expression and quickly pushed out my super hungry eldest son. "I'll keep one." "You take this one." "Eldest son, then what about Uncle Damian? He wants to be my daddy too." Me, speechless. Baby. Mommy feels like she could be laid to rest today. Chapter 1. I woke up groggy in bed, aching all over, with hickeys all over my arms. Memories of last night came flooding back like a tidal wave. Yesterday was Augustine's birthday, and when I got there, they'd already had quite a bit to drink. The girl sitting next to Augustine was pouring him a drink. "Augustine, have a drink," the woman said in an annoyingly flirtatious tone. Augustine saw me come over but didn't hold back at all, acting like the woman he was once engaged to as kids, didn't even exist. He grabbed the glass and downed it without hesitation. Augustine's brother, David, couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Sarah, come sit here." I nodded and walked over to the seat next to David. As I passed Augustine, he said, "Sit here." For a moment, I felt stuck, not sure whether to sit or not. Augustine looked up at me with a playful smile and said, "What? You're not listening to your big brother Augustine anymore?" After that, if I didn't sit down, I'd be the one acting unreasonable. But I hadn't even been sitting for half an hour when the man beside me started acting a little off. He leaned on me without realizing it, his whole body feeling warm. I steadied him and asked with concern, "Augustine, what's wrong? Is Augustine drunk?" "Sarah, help him upstairs to rest," a voice said. I nodded and helped Augustine out of the private room. He was burning up, his whole body weak as he leaned against me. The place that should have been just a few steps away suddenly felt miles apart. I dutifully took Augustine to the door, and while swiping the key card, I couldn't help but tease, "Augustine, why are you so hot?" Once we got to the bedroom, I couldn't wait to toss him onto the bed. Out of habit, I collapsed onto the bed too. Landing on top of him, Augustine let out a muffled grunt and opened his eyes. Our eyes locked, and the air hung heavy for a few seconds. I struggled to get up, but Augustine held me tightly. The next moment, he flipped me over and pinned me down, his hurried kisses landing on my face. I whimpered, letting out broken sounds. "Augustine, let me go." "Not a chance," Augustine said, kissing me with complete focus. Then I felt a chill on my body. I looked down with effort and realized I was almost at home base. I fought back even harder, but Augustine effortlessly grabbed both my hands with one hand and pinned them above my head. "Why don't you call me Brother Augustine anymore?" Augustine asked, half drunk and half awake. I opened my mouth to speak, but Augustine immediately covered it, silencing me, and pressed his lips against mine. Chapter 2. Even though I really didn't want to admit it, I actually slept with Augustine. I stared at the man sleeping soundly beside me, unsure of what to do. I realized I liked Augustine when I was 13, but as I got older, I also clearly understood that Augustine didn't like me. He hates everything his parents arrange, including me, his childhood sweetheart. For years, whenever Augustine's friends saw me, they'd say, "Augustine, your wife is here." Those jokes always made me blush, but Augustine would just frown and tell them to cut it out. After a while, everyone knew Augustine really disliked me, his childhood sweetheart, and I kept my feelings for Augustine buried deep inside. I was afraid that if I showed I liked him, we wouldn't even be able to stay friends. But that night completely shattered the calm I'd worked so hard to keep. "Augustine, when I wake up, how am I supposed to face this? Should I make him take responsibility? His parents will force him to marry me, and then he'll go from disliking me to outright hating me. From then on, we'll just resent each other, and that's not the outcome I want." Instead of facing Augustine's anger head-on, the smartest move is to run. So, I ran. After living it up at home for over a month, I fainted from low blood sugar and ended up in the hospital, where the doctor told me I was pregnant. My best friend Cecilia totally freaked out when she heard, "Whose baby is it?" "Augustine's," I said awkwardly. "Does he know?" Cecilia asked again. I kept my head down and said, "I don't know." "Terminate it." "No," Cecilia, exasperated but speaking with genuine concern, said, "You really like Augustine that much? Having his kids without even a proper status? I dodged the question, gently rubbing my belly with a loving smile. It's not like I can't afford to raise them. Besides, with my looks and family background, the line of guys wanting to be stepdads to my kids stretches all the way to France. What kind of status? That's so shallow. Broaden your horizons. Augustine has a good-looking face, so my kid will definitely be cute too. Cecilia rubbed her forehead and gave a wry smile. You're hopeless, such a lovesick fool. I stayed quiet and didn't argue with her. I made it sound nice, but honestly, this might be my last connection to Augustine. I wanted to keep him. Before, when I saw girls willing to lose themselves for love, I never understood it. But when it happened to me, I suddenly understood. I told my parents I wanted to go out and travel for a few months. My parents weren't surprised at all. They didn't even ask where I was going. I bought a villa in Y City, far from City A, and hired a few housekeepers to take care of my daily life. Chapter 3. At the start of the second year, I gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. The older one is the boy. I named him Colin. The younger one is the girl. Her name is Ava. The kids grew up so fast, before I knew it. They were already 5 years old. I haven't been home at all these past 5 years, and my parents gradually started to sense something was wrong. If I didn't call them every now and then, they'd probably think I'd been kidnapped and taken to some remote corner of the world. Serafina, do you even care about your parents anymore? You haven't come home in years. Think you're all grown up now. Huh? As I listened to my mom scold me, my eyes started to well up with tears. It's not like I don't miss them too. If you really don't like that Lou family boy, then we just won't marry you off to him. There's no need to run away and never come home. Hearing about Augustine again, I couldn't help but feel my heart skip a beat. Mommy, how is he doing? I'm a little curious, after his childhood sweetheart disappeared for 5 years. Did he ever ask my parents about me? Why don't you come back and see for yourself? I'm telling you, Serafina, you have to come home this year. Mom gave me her final ultimatum. Even if she hadn't said anything, I was planning to go back anyway. Before I left, I said goodbye to Damian, the doctor who operated on me back then. He's helped me a lot over the past 5 years. When Damian heard I was leaving, he looked a bit stunned, then smiled and said, "Heading back to City A?" I nodded. He went on, "What a coincidence. I just got a transfer notice. They want me to work in City A too." I was a little surprised. Really? I don't know if I'm just being paranoid, but I always feel like Damian has feelings for me that go beyond just doctor and patient. Damian acted all casual, raising his eyebrows with a smile. Yeah. Did you forget my parents are in City A too? This time, I'm planning to go back and stay for good. That's when I remembered. Damian told me 3 years ago that he goes home once a year. I guess it's to visit his parents. The weight in my heart lifted, and I spoke to Damian in a much lighter tone. So, shall we go together? Sure. Chapter 4. When I got back to City A, my parents were both waiting for me at the airport. The moment they saw me, their eyes filled with tears and they rushed over. Sarah, you really... Mom was crying and laughing at the same time, not even sure what to say to me. Mom, don't cry. Look what I brought back for you. I brought the 2 little ones out from behind me and showed them to my parents. Mom gasped in surprise. Whose kids did you bring home? Hurry up and take them back. I laughed and said, these are your grandson and granddaughter. Hello, Grandpa and Grandma, the 2 little ones said in unison. Mom's face instantly lit up with joy. She pinched the kid's cheeks, absolutely delighted, and couldn't stop playing with him. You went off for 5 years and came back with 2 kids? Dad's expression changed in an instant. He looked furious. Where's the kid's father? Dad pressed. I stayed silent for a moment. And Mom, sharp-eyed as ever, spotted Damian not far from me. Is that your boyfriend? He really is quite the catch. I quickly grabbed Mom and explained. He's just a friend. Worried she wouldn't believe me, I leaned in and whispered. He was the lead surgeon when I had the kids. But that didn't stop Mom from giving Damian a thorough once-over, sizing him up from head to toe. Then she said, sweetheart, I support you. When we got home, I told them everything that had happened over the years. I told the story, mixing truth with a bit of fiction. I said I had a boyfriend, but he died in a plane crash. I really liked him, so I had 2 kids. That story isn't true. The kid's dad is Augustine, and he's very much alive. I thought my parents would buy it, but I forgot. They've watched Augustine grow up since he was a kid, and my son Colin looks about 80% like a young Augustine. Mom looked at the mini version of Augustine, thought for a moment, and finally asked, "What's going on between you and Augustine? Did he bully you?" "I'll go have it out with him," I quickly said. "Mom, he didn't bully me. It was all just an accident. Besides, can't our Sue family afford to raise 2 kids? Your daughter is so outstanding, there are plenty of guys who'd be happy to marry into our family." Mom followed my train of thought, and the more she thought about it, the more it seemed to make sense. "Then Mom, I'll go set you up for marriage tomorrow. It's settled then." No matter how many times I refused, my mom was determined to join the ladies' tea circle and find a well-matched son-in-law for herself. I never expected that the morning after my mom went matchmaking. By the afternoon, rumors were already flying among the wealthy families. Miss Sue, who'd been missing for 5 years, came back, and the first thing she did was dump young Master Lou. Within just 5 days, the story had twisted into Miss Sue cheating on young Master Lou, and then it turned into Miss Sue and Mr. Augustine having 2 kids together. And then Augustine showed up at my door. The first thing he said to me after 5 years was, "I heard you gave me 2 kids." We locked eyes, both completely speechless, seeing Augustine's face getting darker. I quickly shoved the always hungry Colin forward. "I'll keep one. You take this one." Colin chewed on his chicken leg, looking torn. "If I go with this guy, what about Uncle Coo? He wants to be my daddy too." I was at a loss for words. "Baby, if you want a new mommy, just say so. Looks like your mommy here is about to rest in peace today." "Serafina, I'm not even dead yet, and you're already taking my son to find him a stepdad?" Augustine glared at me, gritting his teeth. That really made me angry. I pulled Colin behind me. "Augustine, what kind of father do you think you are? What do my kids have to do with you?" I almost said, "Well, at least he contributed something, otherwise I wouldn't have these 2 adorable little cuties." "Serafina, let's get married." Augustine's words made my jaw drop. "Get married? Why would I ever marry this jerk?" "Augustine, are you okay? There are plenty of people who want to marry me. Why should I marry you? If you marry me now, you get 2 adorable kids with 0 effort." Augustine is such a schemer. "Plenty? Who? That Damian Coo?" Augustine moved closer, wrapped his arm around my waist, and pulled me into his arms. Hearing that, my face fell. All my confidence disappeared in a flash. I couldn't believe it and asked, "You investigated me?" He was the one who didn't want to marry me and insisted on keeping his distance back then. Now he wants to marry me, and he's also the one getting mad at another guy. Augustine shot back with a question. "Is it a problem for me to look into my runaway fiancé from 5 years ago?" I couldn't control my emotions. My lips went pale as I gritted my teeth and said, "You're seriously crazy. I'm the crazy one?" Augustine let out an angry laugh, grabbed my chin, and kissed me fiercely. His biting made my lips ache, and before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. Augustine tasted the salt, paused for a second, then asked, "Serafina, are you actually crying? Are you really that unwilling to marry me?" I didn't say a word, just silently let my tears fall, my heart aching with bitterness and sorrow. The man I'd loved for so long ignored me for 5 years, and the first time we met again, all he did was interrogate me nonstop. It's like he never did anything wrong, and everything was somehow my fault. But from the very start, he never planned to go through with this marriage. Wah! Colin, sitting beside me, burst into tears. I quickly pushed the man in front of me away and soothed the baby. "Don't cry, sweetie. Mommy will take you to get something tasty soon." Wah! I don't want him to be my daddy. He bullies mommy. Colin pouted, rushed into my arms, and wiped his nose, sniffling as he spoke. Hearing my eldest son's innocent words, all my worries from earlier vanished in an instant. I actually managed a genuine laugh. All right. We won't let him be your daddy. Mommy will take you to see Uncle Coo tomorrow, okay?" Little Ava was absolutely thrilled when she heard we were going to see Damian. She bounced out of the room, grabbed my sleeve, and asked, "Can we go see Uncle Ku now?" Augustine's face fell when he saw his own daughter taking a liking to another man. He reached out his hand and awkwardly asked, "Xiaoyan, don't you like Daddy?" Ava shrank back in fear, then burst into tears. "There's a bad uncle. Woo-woo. This uncle is so scary." I had just finished comforting Colin, and then went to calm Ava. Finally, I took the two kids, worn out from crying, upstairs. Before closing the door, I glanced at Augustine and sighed helplessly. "Augustine, please don't come again." Then, with a loud bang, I shut the door. Chapter 5. But Augustine clearly didn't listen to a word I said. The next day, I dropped my two little ones off at kindergarten. When I went to pick them up after school, the teacher told me their dad had already taken them. I completely lost my temper at the kindergarten gate. Seriously, what kind of teachers are you? When did I ever say my kids had a dad? One of the teachers, a round-faced woman, nervously tried to explain in a small voice. "You can't really blame us. Colin looks just like that man. He's basically a mini version of him." I shot a sharp glare toward the source of the voice, already guessing which jerk had taken my kids. So I sped over to the Liu family villa, grabbed a megaphone, and yelled, "Augustine, the kids are already 5 years old. Now you finally show up to snatch them? Where were you all this time? Give me back my two little babies. I'm telling you, they're both my precious darlings, and I'm not giving you either of them." The two little ones heard my voice and ran out of the villa, shouting, "Mommy!" My fierce expression instantly softened as I opened my arms to the kids. "Sweethearts, come home with Mommy, okay?" Ava turned around, clutching a Barbie doll she'd gotten from who knows where, and looked at the man behind her. I pinched her cheek and asked, "Little Ava, do you not like Mommy anymore? Do you have to watch his mood even when you come home with Mommy?" "Mommy, I like you, but Daddy promised to buy my Barbie a princess house." Ava's little face scrunched up, like she was trying to figure out how to get both things. Colin looked totally exasperated. "Sis, you're so bad. Yesterday you said you liked Uncle Ku, and today you're calling for Daddy instead." Ava buried her head in my arms and shot back. "Didn't you eat enough of that meat they just brought in from who knows where? And you still have the nerve to talk about me? Sarah, I'm the kid's father. You can't stop me from seeing them." Augustine looked down at me, his voice low and serious. "Besides, the kids need a dad. I'm the best choice." There he goes again, acting like it's all just a matter of course. I stood up, holding my two little ones by the hand. "Relax. I'll find a new dad for the kids soon. No need for you to rush into being our son-in-law." Ava and Colin followed me home without saying a word when they saw I was upset. What I said to Augustine was just out of anger, but I never expected my mom to find a potential son-in-law so fast. I had just had a huge fight with Augustine, and the very next morning my mom woke me up to go on an arranged date. Lying in bed, I groggily said to my mom, "Mom, I just made a scene at Augustine's place yesterday. Who would be in such a hurry to be a stepdad?" My mom just yanked off my blanket and sat by the window, explaining everything in detail. "That eldest son from the Lin family, he's really handsome. I think he's a great catch. The only son from the Wang family is into design now. I buy a lot of my clothes from his place. And that kid from the Wu family, he's doing research these days." I was getting annoyed, scratched my head absent-mindedly, and asked, "Mom, do you really want your daughter married off that badly?" Mom smiled and said, "Of course not. It's just that all these guys agreed to come over." My eyes widened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'd heard of all the men my mom mentioned. They were all from wealthy families. Wait, I already have 2 kids, and there are still people actually eager to be their stepdad? But Mom just brushed it off. "I've explained everything, and they're all willing. They really like you. Pack up and come on an arranged date with Mommy." Chapter 6. My mom's way of setting up arranged dates is honestly pretty wild. Most families do it one at a time, but not her. She calls in 3 guys at once and calls it competition. It's not like I'm a soccer ball. What's there to fight over? I looked at the 3 men in front of me. Each one was a total catch. So what do they even see in me, other than being rich? I've got nothing else going for me. The thing is, they're not exactly hurting for money either. I calmly took a sip of coffee and asked, "So, what is it about me that caught your eye?" Miss Sue, we met when we were kids. But you punched me. The Wong family's designer gave a slight smile. But why does that smile give me such a creepy feeling? I glanced awkwardly at my mom. She never told me about this. Sarah, when the elementary school auntie brought you over to our place to play, you accidentally broke a vase, but insisted it was me who did it. I ended up getting a good beating from my dad because of that. The eldest of the Lin family smiled with a deeper meaning. Sarah, I'm not as petty as they are. The youngest Wu son raised an eyebrow and smiled at me, but then said, but you haven't forgotten how you made me do your homework back in elementary school, have you? This guy's definitely not here with good intentions. I tilted my head and whispered to my mom next to me, are we here to find a match or make enemies? Mom gave an awkward smile too. I have no idea either. The atmosphere was so awkward. It felt like you could dig out a magic castle from the floor. My mom's seen it all. Something like this doesn't faze her at all. I sat next to her, listening as she praised the three men endlessly, while making me sound completely worthless. Then she subtly implied I wasn't good enough for them, and told them if they ever needed anything, they could just go straight to the Su family to find her. The men nodded and left one after another, each saying it was because of work. And just like that, the nerve-wracking arranged date dinner finally came to an end. I quickly called the waiter to bring over some desserts and took a few bites to calm my nerves. I even joked with my mom, Mom, you really have a talent for picking enemies. I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to. My mom said. My mom suddenly stopped talking. I looked at her, and she was staring at the coffee shop entrance. I saw Augustine glaring at our table, his face stormy. He strode over, and for some reason, my heart started to feel heavy. Augustine was still a ways off, but I could already hear his gritted voice. Serafina, you'd rather ditch their real dad and rush to find the kids a stepdad? You're really something. He looked like he wanted to eat me alive, and I was completely baffled. Our engagement was over ages ago. From now on, you walk your own path, and I'll take the kids on mine. Let's just stay out of each other's way. The coffee shop was already quiet, and my voice was so loud that now everyone in the place was staring at me. I could hear people whispering all around me. I heard the eldest Miss Sue had 2 kids with someone, and now she's just looking for a guy who doesn't even want money to move in. Wait, Serafina is so young, she already has 2 kids? Seriously? Is that true? How does a shameless woman like her even dare to show her face outside? I grew up spoiled and willful, always doted on by my family. It was the first time I'd ever faced rumors like this, and I had no idea what to do. Augustine stopped right in front of me, clearly having heard everything, and the next second, with a loud thud, he dropped to his knees. Sarah, I know it was my fault, and that's why you had to leave with the kids. I'm sorry. I was wrong. That really freaked me out. This is so not Augustine's style. How could Augustine do something so ridiculous? While I was confused, everyone around us was stunned too. Didn't they say young Master Lu doesn't like Serafina? What's going on here? Is Serafina really that impressive? She actually made the eldest young master kneel. Looks like we're going to be all over the news tomorrow. Augustine must have pissed off Serafina again. It's not like the Su family can't afford to raise 2 kids. Is the young master really kneeling to win his wife back? All right. As soon as he kneels, he turns into the young master chasing after his wife for love. Just because I have 2 kids. Nobody wants me. They say I have no self-respect. Sarah, I was wrong. Afraid he'd pull another wild stunt, I quickly dragged him up and got us out of there. Chapter 7. On the way home, the driver was at the wheel. Augustine sat in the front, and I sat in the back with Mom. My mom's eyes kept darting between me and Augustine. In the end, I couldn't take it anymore and took the initiative to clear things up. There's nothing between us. My mom didn't buy it and teased. If there's nothing going on, why did he drop to his knees like that? Augustine's eyes flickered, and he admitted, Auntie, it was my fault for making Sarah sad. It's only natural for her to be upset with me. I looked at him and gave a mocking smile. I'm not blaming you. And I'm not upset either. Augustine lowered his eyes, looking gloomy. Sarah, you used to like me so much. How could you not be upset? A trace of sarcasm flashed in my eyes, and I snapped. You knew I liked you before. and still treated me that way. Why would I keep liking you? Do I have nothing better to do? Sarah, I swear I didn't mean it. Stop. Just shut up. I don't want to talk to you. I relaxed against the back seat, closed my eyes, and said lazily. Suddenly, I heard a voice. System. Get out here. Didn't you say kneeling would be enough? Why hasn't Sarah forgiven me yet? Host. All the things you did to Miss Sue before, there's a whole list. Which one of them actually wronged you? So what exactly do I have to do to keep her from getting mad at me? I know you're in a hurry, but don't rush. We need to be persistent. I believe it won't be long before Miss Sue is touched by your sincerity. That was Augustine's voice. I glanced at the driver and my mom. Neither of them seemed to notice the voice. Am I the only one who can hear this? What system? Host. The system recommends you offer your 100 billion fortune right away to show your determination. But what if Sarah thinks I'm just using money to embarrass her? No way. Absolutely not. Trust me. There's no way this could go wrong. Augustine was loudly scheming with some mysterious system, and I was blatantly eavesdropping. After we got out of the car, my mom invited Augustine over for tea. As it happened, my dad was home too. Augustine bowed to my dad first, then sat down. The four of us sat together on the living room sofa. He looked sincerely at my dad and said, Uncle, I know I've messed up a lot, but I really do care about Sarah, and I'm also the twins' biological father. Just then, that mechanical voice sounded again. Host. Focus! You're trying to win over your wife, not close a business deal. The point is to hand over the Liu family to me on a silver platter. I scoffed. Augustine would never be that dumb. Even if Augustine agrees, would the Liu family parents go along with it? Augustine immediately stopped his long speech and said, if Sarah is willing to marry me, then everything the Liu family has will be hers. Dad raised an eyebrow, looking a bit disapproving. Xiao Liu, I watched you grow up. You know our family isn't short on money. The way you said that makes it sound like we're selling our daughter. Augustine frowned, just when I thought he was about to get mad. I overheard the two of them whispering, what should I do now? This is totally out of my league. You said, everything in the Liu family belongs to the twins. You promised you'd treat their mom and the kids well for the rest of your life. If you ever do anything to upset Miss Sue, you'll leave with nothing. Augustine repeated the words in a robotic voice. My dad nodded approvingly, but then said, Xiao Liu, your determination is clear to both your uncle and aunt. But the most important thing is still Sarah. The one you hurt was Sarah's heart. Augustine lowered his head in guilt, hiding the strange emotions in his eyes. The mechanical voice said pitifully, sigh. You really can't blame the host for everything. Your parents were never around when you were little. They only gave you money, forced you to be the best at everything as a kid. And when you grew up, they pushed you to do business and maximize profits. Growing up in a loveless world, it's normal to be emotionally distant. The only times you ever lost control were because of Miss Sue. But why didn't you go after Miss Sue when she left 5 years ago? Yeah, so what? Chapter 8. I can forgive what happened 5 years ago. But how am I supposed to get over you disappearing and ignoring me for 5 whole years? This isn't something you can just erase by kneeling down and saying a few sweet words. Augustine came clean and told me everything that happened after I left. At first, Augustine would just go off somewhere for a few days to have fun. Later, when he was doing business, the other companies seemed to have checked him out. They knew I was the only woman around him all these years, so they tried to impress him by gifting a brand new necklace from a famous international designer. The necklace also has a beautiful name, True Love. Only then did he realize I hadn't contacted him for a whole week. He kept calling me, but it always showed the line was busy. He sent texts and WeChat messages, but they all came back with a red exclamation mark. Augustine tried calling me from different numbers, but I rejected every call. In the end, I just changed my number. I was so careful that I even had the nanny get me a new SIM card, making sure Augustine couldn't find any trace of me. He started looking for me, reaching out to all my close friends, but none of them had any news about me, until he asked his best friend, David. David chewed him out first, then said, Sarah left because you broke her heart. Someone like you isn't good enough for Sarah. In the end, David gave Augustine a letter, saying it was from me. The letter basically said I was really upset, didn't want to see him, hoped he wouldn't come looking for me, and that we should both just go our separate ways. Damn it. I never wrote any letter like that. That damn system asked again, you trust David that much? Sarah and he are super close. If I was second in her heart back then, David was definitely third. The system asked a random question, so who's first? Of course. It's my parents. System, you're pretty strict about this. Huh? What was David trying to achieve by talking to Augustine like that? After I found out I was pregnant, David never reached out to me again. Augustine was silent for a moment, then looked up, his eyes full of determination. I'll make Sarah forgive me, he said. If Augustine went head-to-head with me and threw those harsh words to hurt me, I could just throw them right back at him. But when Augustine looks at me with such deep affection, I honestly have no idea what to do. All these years, except for that one night, I've never seen that look in his eyes, so I just started avoiding him on instinct. I stood up and headed upstairs, leaving just one sentence behind, Mom, I'm tired and want to rest. Can you pick up the 2 little ones this afternoon? Augustine, sensing his chance to step up, he quickly said, I'll go. I didn't say anything, just nodded slightly, giving silent permission. After all, he's the kid's real dad. Or maybe. I was starting to waver. Back in my room, I lay on the big, comfy bed, my mind all over the place. David, so why do that? Augustine, do you love me? And that necklace called true love. Chapter 9. A photo of Augustine kneeling for love at the coffee shop made all the major headlines. All my old friends started asking me for the latest updates, eager to be the first to get the gossip. I tapped open the news notification on my phone. Hashtag rich kid young master kneels for love. Hashtag Serafina knows how to keep her man in line. Hashtag Augustine, I was wrong. Hashtag comments below. Didn't they say Augustine wasn't into women? Guess he just hadn't met his true love yet. I'm their high school friend. Augustine absolutely doted on Serafina. He brought her homemade meals and desserts from home every single day for 3 years. Never missed once. I've got a lot to say about the Serafina. Back in middle school, I was constantly harassed by a boy, and then Augustine beat him up so badly. It was brutal. I'm totally shipping this. This is what childhood sweetheart love looks like. My best friend Cecilia saw the news and rushed over to my place to watch the drama. She was munching on snacks the housekeeper had just made, and with her mouth full, she asked, So, what's going on between you and Augustine? I shook my head, a trace of confusion in my eyes. I don't know. Cecilia smacked her lips thoughtfully and said, Honestly, even though I'm not really a fan of Augustine, he's kept himself squeaky clean these past 5 years, not a single scandal. And hasn't he always been good to you since you were little? I asked, puzzled. Why does everyone say he's nice to me? Cecilia perked up. Everyone? I nodded. Yeah, you and those so-called classmates of mine online. Cecilia started telling the story. Like in elementary school, when I fell and Augustine carried me home on his back. Or that time during the spring field trip, when I got separated from the group. The teacher told everyone to stay put and was about to call the police. But Augustine went back alone to look for you. Or the harassment incident in middle school, and the non-stop desserts in high school. All the trouble I got into at school. Augustine was always the one who helped me out. Honestly, he had already become a part of my life a long time ago. You seriously didn't notice any of this, did you? Cecilia exclaimed in shock. I nodded, a little embarrassed. Cecilia, everyone says Augustine is emotionally distant. But honestly, I think you're the one who's emotionally distant. Think about it, has Augustine ever treated anyone else like that? I thought about it carefully, and it seemed like everything Cecilia said was true. All of Augustine's exceptions and special treatment were for me, but I just brushed it off as a joke and ignored it all. Why didn't I just ask him what he thought myself? 5 years ago, I just blindly guessed what Augustine was thinking and forced my own opinions onto him. Wasn't that way too unfair to him? Augustine has been feeding me all kinds of delicious food for 10 years straight. Like he's been raising me for nothing. He's emotionally distant, never takes the initiative to talk, and barely says a word. Why couldn't I just be a little braver and ask him what he was thinking sooner? I hurriedly put on my shoes and left the house, saying one thing before I left. I'm going to see Augustine. Chapter 10. When I got to Lou Group, the lobby manager very responsibly led me up to the CEO's office. In the elevator, I asked him, "How did you know I was looking for your CEO?" The manager said that last time Augustine left in a hurry, his wallet fell on the floor, and my photo slipped out too. The representative from the partner company asked who the girl in the photo was. Augustine said, "She's the one I like. I've seen your photo, you're really pretty." I smiled and thanked him. "Thanks. I'll tell him to give you a raise." The manager brought me to Augustine's office door. He was about to knock, but I stopped him and waved for him to go take care of his own work. Augustine looks so attractive when he's focused on his work. He looked just like he always did. Every time I glanced at him back then, most of the time, he was either doing homework, working on problems, or reading. He was really smart and finished his homework super fast. Every time, I'd shamelessly ask him to help me with mine. I knocked on the door, then let myself into Augustine's office. Augustine looked surprised. "Sarah," he said. "Yeah." The air was completely silent. "Aren't you going to ask why I'm here?" I asked. Augustine admitted. "I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing." Host. "You're so clueless. No woman likes it when a bossy CEO says stuff like that." Augustine, "Why do I have to act all serious around my wife?" System comforted, "Not bad. Looks like you really took 108 ways to win back your wife seriously." Augustine, "Of course. Right now. I just want to go back and beat up that jerk who's always picking on my wife." 108 ways to win back your wife. I honestly can't picture Augustine reading something like that. I couldn't help but laugh. "So you do realize the stuff you said before wasn't exactly winning anyone over?" "Huh?" Augustine quietly nodded. "Then why? When they called me your little wifey before, did you tell them to stop joking around?" Augustine's eyes darkened a little. "Back then, I didn't know what it meant to like someone, but I did know that a girl's reputation was everything. I didn't want them to think you were just my accessory." "You shouldn't have to wear the label, Augustine." I was stunned. So the 4 words that trapped me so deeply were actually hiding Augustine's feelings he couldn't express. My eyes grew wet, and with a hint of tears in my voice, I asked him, "You don't even know if you like me. So why are you so good to me?" So good that even I, a spoiled and pampered young lady, started to take it for granted. Augustine wiped away my tears, his voice full of tenderness. "The little prince is supposed to spoil the little princess." Overjoyed, I threw myself into Augustine's arms. "Augustine, would you like to be the father of the child?" Augustine was stunned for a moment, then cautiously asked, "What did you just say?" I was sobbing so hard I could barely speak. "I love you. Let's get married." Augustine's body trembled slightly, overwhelmed with excitement. "Yes, yes, yes." He hugged me tightly, and finally, with a trembling voice, said, "Sarah, thank you for still being willing to give me this chance." Chapter 11. After making up with Augustine, he showed it off all over his social media. He brags every day about having a wife now, and even 2 kids. Because of this, some people with bad intentions started targeting my 2 kids. My parents took the kids to the amusement park, and in the blink of an eye, they were gone. The kidnappers took the Lou and Sue family kids, but didn't ask for any money. If they don't want money, are they after Augustine's life? I have no idea. After Augustine got a letter from someone claiming to be the kidnapper, he didn't hesitate at all. He decided to go meet them. He was worried I'd get into trouble and wouldn't let me go, but I went anyway. From a distance, I watched as Augustine walked step by step toward the edge of the cliff. There was a man standing at the edge, and next to him were 2 kids tied up, their mouths taped shut so they couldn't say a word. I used binoculars to get a clear look at his face. It was David. They were talking about something, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. I crept through the thick grass, and finally I could just barely make out their voices. "David, 5 years ago and now, 5 years later, why are you doing this?" Augustine asked. He was asking why I pretended to give him that letter, and why I wanted to kidnap his child. David laughed like a maniac. "You're asking me why? Ever since we were kids, I've lived in your shadow. Everyone pushed me, especially you. No matter how hard I tried, I could never catch up to you. Why are you all pushing me? Why? Back in school, you were always number 1, like it was set in stone, and I was always the eternal runner-up. Forced by our parents to study like crazy, but still never able to catch up to you. After taking over the family business, I still couldn't do as well as you. They pushed me to cozy up to Serafina. The Sue family only has one daughter. If I marry her, the Sue family will definitely be mine one day. But Serafina, that spoiled princess who acts all high and mighty, only you would treat her like she's some kind of treasure. Augustine was furious. So you forged a letter? David laughed. Augustine, you're just clueless. If you'd had someone check that letter, you'd have realized it wasn't even written by Serafina herself. Augustine, let's fight. If you beat me, I'll let them both go. Augustine took off his jacket and started fighting David. In the end, Augustine barely won and pinned David to the ground. You lost. As soon as Augustine finished speaking, David suddenly pulled out a small knife and stabbed Augustine in the arm. Augustine cried out in pain. David took the chance to break free from his grip and charged at Colin and Ava, about to hurt the two kids. My heart was pounding as I shouted, "No!" Then I ran toward where the kids were, but Augustine got there before me. He threw himself over the two kids, shielding them with his body, and took the knife himself. The police arrived and quickly surrounded David. Crying, I asked Augustine, "Are you crazy?" But Augustine didn't even have a chance to answer me before he collapsed right in front of me, staring at my blood-covered hands. I sobbed so hard I could barely breathe. Augustine, don't die on me. Augustine was lying in my arms while the doctor rushed to stop the bleeding and save him. With the last bit of strength he had, he managed a faint smile and tried to comfort me. It's okay. Don't cry. Then he closed his eyes. In the hospital room, I kept watch by Augustine's bedside. Standing next to me was Damian, someone I hadn't seen in ages. He said, "Don't worry. He's just unconscious. He'll wake up soon." I took a deep breath and thanked Damian. Damian suddenly said, "My gut tells me there's someone in your heart. And so far, it looks like I'm right." Damian was so straightforward, it looks like my earlier suspicion was spot on. I stared straight at Augustine's pale face and said, "After I left 5 years ago, I knew I'd never like anyone the way I liked Augustine." Damian, I'm sorry. When it comes to feelings, when adults talk, they always leave things unsaid. Damian asked, "Are we still friends?" I said, "Of course." Chapter 12. Augustine woke up right after Damian left. The moment he woke up, he started questioning, "Damian? You've never called me by such an affectionate name before." I poured him a glass of warm water to soothe his throat. Seeing him still so energetic and jealous, I finally felt at ease. I smiled and asked, "What do you want me to call you?" "Let me call you that. After all, we've got a long future ahead of us." Augustine also smiled. True. End of main story. Augustine's point of view. When I was in kindergarten, a little girl in a pink princess dress joined our class. My parents were always busy, so it was always my grandpa who picked me up from kindergarten. I asked my grandpa who that little girl was. Grandpa said, "Sue family's little princess." Grandpa taught me to be nice to girls, to let them have their way, and never to bully them. So, whenever someone made Serafina cry, I would step up and comfort this little princess. Strangely, even when the teachers couldn't calm her down, I was able to cheer her up. Serafina held back her tears, her eyes red as she asked me, "Are you the little prince?" I nodded, and Serafina was really happy. She said, "The little prince is supposed to protect the princess." Serafina became my little sidekick. She would sweetly call me Augustine brother. When I was in elementary school, my grandpa passed away, and I was sad for a long time. But when my grandpa was buried, my parents didn't make it back in time because of work. That was the first time I ever hated my parents. After grandpa was gone, I never felt happy again. My parents only ever cared about my grades, they never cared about how I felt. Serafina went to elementary school, middle school, high school, and even college with me. She was always so cheerful, always smiling, and her smile lit up everyone around her. Because of that line from Serafina, "The little prince is supposed to protect the princess," I always treated her well, let her have her way, and spoiled her. All my friends kept asking if I liked Serafina. I didn't even know what it meant to like someone. Nobody ever told me. All I knew was that I was Serafina's little prince, so I was supposed to be good to her. Later, There were rumors that Serafina was my wife, my childhood fiancé, my little shadow. I put a stop to their jokes. Reputation means a lot for girls. Serafina is a good girl, she shouldn't get tangled up in these kinds of rumors. Serafina isn't my child bride. And she's not my wife. She's just my little shadow. She shouldn't be labeled as mine. She's her own person. Day after day, I kept shutting down those jokes. Up until my 23rd birthday, my parents kept pushing me to marry Serafina, laying out all the pros and cons. As long as I marry her, the Sue family will be mine one day. It really annoyed me. My relationship with Serafina shouldn't just be about benefits and interests. My friends started joking about me being a little wife again. And once more, I stopped them. By the time Serafina arrived, I was already a bit out of it and didn't really know what I was doing. When I woke up the next morning, I was the only one left in that huge room, and there was still blood on the white sheets. There was an urgent issue at work, so I rushed back to the office and then went abroad for business. After finally getting a break, my business partner gave me a necklace called True Love. I took one look at that necklace and knew it would be perfect for Serafina. She'd look amazing in it. When I tried to reach Serafina, I found she was always on another call, and all my WeChat messages just showed red exclamation marks. I tried contacting her through all our friends, but it was no use. It wasn't until I asked David about her. He started repeating all the things Serafina disliked about me, and then pulled out a letter she'd written. David got along really well with Serafina, so I never doubted that the letter was real. I just thought Serafina really didn't want to see me. I thought, the little prince can't always protect the little princess. She has to leave that castle someday, and eventually leave the little prince too. I often find myself staring at photos of Serafina from our college days, lost in thought. 5 years later, Serafina came back, and rumor has it she brought 2 kids with her. The boy looks exactly like a little version of me. The very first thing Serafina did when she returned was actually to start looking for a husband. I was so mad. I pulled every string I could to dig up what happened to her all these years. Damian, that OBGYN, was the one who did Serafina's C-section. He's always hanging around Serafina. I thought, if the princess just stayed in the castle I built for her, with my mark on her, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. It was the first time I'd ever had such a dangerous thought. When I rushed to the Sue family villa, Serafina seemed eager to distance herself from me. My eldest son, Colin, said that Damian wanted him to be his daddy too. I got really agitated and started saying some pretty harsh things. I ended up making all 3 of them cry. Serafina told me not to come again, but how could I possibly stay away? The next day, I brought the 2 kids back to my place. I coaxed them, tried to cheer them up, bribed them with their favorite things, and told them that I was their real dad. Serafina showed up at my place soon after, and once again, I lost my temper and we parted on bad terms. Just when I was at my lowest, a robotic voice suddenly popped into my head. It called me host and said it was the wife-chasing system. Its mission? To make me go through the ultimate wife-chasing hell and patch things up. I listened to its non-stop tips for winning her back, plus the 10,086 ways to chase your wife that magically appeared in my hand. I crammed all night, and I never thought I'd get to use it the very next day. I got a tip, Serafina was going on an arranged date. By the time I rushed to the coffee shop, I watched as 3 guys left one after another right in front of me. Wow. 3 blind dates at once. I totally forgot all the rules for winning someone over and just ended up saying things that annoyed everyone. Serafina and I clashed again, but all the gossip swirling around her made me feel sorry for her, and I started to calm down. The system told me to kneel. Without hesitation, I knelt down in front of her. I did exactly what the system said, and sure enough, it worked. Sarah didn't stop me from getting close to the twins anymore. Later, Sarah came to my office to see me. I was a little nervous and didn't know what to say. She asked me a lot of questions, and I answered honestly, just saying what was on my mind. Later, Sarah asked if I wanted to be the kid's dad. She also said she loves me. She said, "Let's get married." In the end, the little princess still belonged to her little prince. But the good times didn't last. Someone kidnapped my 2 little sweethearts. That person was David. I was really surprised. David got along pretty well with me, and especially well with Sarah. I can't believe he would kidnap the children of 2 good friends. I never knew David had so much pain inside. Actually, my experiences are a lot like his, except I have light. And he doesn't. He always lived in my shadow, under the smile of someone he hated. I suddenly felt a bit sorry for him. So when the police asked if I wanted to settle, I talked it over with Sarah and finally agreed. But he still had to go to jail. When I was in the hospital, Damian came to visit. I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep. The two of them talked for ages. I just can't figure out how those two have so much to talk about. Doesn't Damian have a wife of his own? Sarah calls him Damian and even says they're friends. Damn it. Who wants to be friends anyway? Side story. Chapter 1. The night of the wedding. I heard that mechanical voice again. Female lead's affection level detected at 100%. System automatically unbinding. I asked Augustine if someone had taught him how to win over a wife. Only then did he finally come clean. Chapter 2. The two little ones are always clinging to me. They even want to cuddle with me at night when they sleep. Augustine couldn't stand it anymore, so every so often he'd send them to my parents' place. Until one day, I came home from work and saw the two little ones and the big one all sulking. Mommy is ours. You can't keep sending us to Grandpa and Grandma's. Colin was arguing with Augustine. Ava chimed in. Yeah, exactly. Augustine insisted. Mommy is mine. And that successfully made both little ones cry. I smiled and went over to comfort them. Chapter 3. David had family visitation rights. His parents wished they'd never had the son, and all the relatives avoided him like the plague. In the end, I was the one who brought Augustine along. David looked much older, his chin covered in a scruffy beard. I was holding the prison's approved phone. David, bro, I actually never hated you. So he had countless chances to kill the two kids, but he never did. There was still a bit of kindness left in his heart. David laughed, eyes red, and snapped. Cut the fake concern. What I hate most is people like you. Who are you even pitying? Augustine frowned unhappily. David immediately blew up. Augustine, do you really think that just because you came to see me and forgive me, I'd be grateful? Everything I wanted, didn't want, or was forced to want, you got it all without even trying. Ha. The person I hate most in this life is you. Seeing that talking to him was useless, I pulled Augustine away with me. Chapter 4. The twins' 6th birthday. This birthday party was really grand. Damian, the lead doctor who delivered them back then, was here too. Of course. Augustine looked absolutely furious. I smiled and coaxed him. Come on, smile a little. I'll say yes to anything you want tonight, okay? Augustine whispered in my ear. Then I want it 3 times. Even though we've been together for ages, Augustine still says stuff like that with a straight face. And I still blush. Mommy, why are you blushing? Ava ran over wanting a hug. Augustine crouched down, picked her up, and said to Ava, Mommy's just feeling shy. Colin gave a knowing look and finally said, Daddy must have bullied Mommy. Augustine touched his nose and denied it. I definitely didn't.